the Sony ECM-S1. You're hearing it now. There are a lot of microphones to choose from. Why am I demoing this particular mic? It's because I've never seen one like it before, so I had to try it. So what is it? Sony says the ECM-S1 is a wireless streaming microphone system to record your podcast, live stream, or other forms of content using your Sony camera, computer, or smartphone. But what caught my attention is that it was a wireless microphone system, but the microphone, instead of being a typical lav microphone, is a larger body, broadcast-style condenser microphone. Something I might use on my podcast or live stream, and in some cases these days, those two things are the same. Your high-quality Sony mirrorless camera could be your webcam, which you're using for your podcast and or your live stream. This wraps it all into one. And so you're hearing the microphone in a cardioid polar pattern, which is typically the most common way you'd use the microphone. When I turn it around, you can hear my voice drops off. That's because the microphone is not picking up from behind. It's only picking up from the front in the cardioid polar pattern. However, this has multiple microphones inside of it, so we can switch it to omnidirectional mode and have it pick up all around the microphone. All right, so now we're in omnidirectional mode. It's going to sound a little different because that back microphone is also picking up. So you're hearing more of the reflections in the room from behind the microphone. But if I turn it around, you're also hearing me from the back side as well. This would be if you're in an interview situation and you want to put this microphone between two people, you could pick up the person in front, the person in back. You have one microphone doing the job of two. Is it as good of a solution in an interview? No, I'd rather have a microphone dedicated to each person so it can be closer to them. Proximity is always important. And if it's going to be in between you two, where you're sitting really close, the microphone's going to be splitting the distance and it's not going to sound as good. The other mode is stereo. So we're switched to stereo and we're picking up whichever side of the microphone that we're talking into is going to be more dominant. As I go around the microphone or move it back and forth, my voice is shifting from the different microphones inside. So stereo microphone, if you're outside and you want to pick up ambience of the space out in nature, would sound really cool, or on a city street, you'd have that really dynamic sounding audio. It does come with a pop filter, but the closer you get, the more likely you are to pop P's into the mic. So when you say words with P's and B's in them, you hit the microphone like that with the air and it makes a sound you don't want. So we have a pop filter that comes with it. I don't find that it makes a dramatic difference. It just cuts it down a little. So I do like the way it snaps on very easily, and it's discreet. So you can hear P's are still probably popping when I'm intentional about it, but it might be a little less. So a little extra protection for those plosives if you're someone who has strong plosives going into a microphone. On the front, there is a mute button, which I find is something I want on every microphone, every USB microphone especially. This is a soft touch mute button, but let's see, this is a condenser microphone, so even a soft touch button is likely to pick up that noise. And the mute is off. Did you hear the button press? Yes, I heard it. But the mute button is a nice option. You can plug this microphone into the computer via USB, which is very convenient for any kind of online conferencing, podcast, anything you're doing where you want better quality audio going into your computer. Or you can be wireless and connect it to your computer with the included receiver using USB-C. And if the receiver is on your Sony camera with the MI mount, then the receiver does not need to be recharged. It's going to be powered by the Sony camera, and the microphone itself can go for about 13 hours on a charge. And if you're using the receiver via USB or using the analog out to go into a different kind of audio input, a different kind of camera, you're going to get about 3 hours out of that. I really like the sound of it. It does what I expected it to do. It sounds like a full-bodied, rich condenser microphone. You know, got that voiceover sound. Obviously, there are debates on whether you want to use condenser versus dynamic microphones. That's a different video. The considerations are the amount of background or reverb maybe you're picking up in the room, whatever. In this case, if you have a nice space that is not too echoey and not too much background noise, a condenser microphone sounds fantastic. The microphone is plastic, but it feels really well built. All the buttons feel solid, and it's still extremely lightweight without feeling cheap. And another included benefit is that you have the wireless receiver unit. The ECM model also comes in a lav mic. So if you wanted the lav mic to attach to your person so you could walk around, you could get the microphone version that pairs with the receiver for your camera. So it's kind of this complete system where you can plug in different types of microphone and go wireless into your camera. So this is going to be its best sound because it's fairly close to me, within about 6 inches, and it's being held up in front of my mouth. What's it sound like if we put it on the included stand? Let's check that out. So I've obviously increased its distance from my mouth, but also the angle at which it's receiving the audio. You can hear this probably still sounds really well. In comparison to what I was doing, it's going to sound worse. But if we started like this and you hadn't heard the other audio, this would be fantastic. You could do this, it would sound wonderful, and you'd have no problems. In this case, the microphone is out of shot of the camera. So in a lot of cases, that's something that someone doing video wants. They don't want to see a microphone. You don't have to have a lav mic connected to your chest or a boom mic overhead, but a condenser broadcast style microphone sitting on the desk in front of you. The good thing is though, it has the 1/4-20 mount on the bottom. So we can take a little microphone stand, put it on that, get it raised up, and it's going to sound even better. All right, now we've got it mounted onto the mini tripod. Obviously, I'm not going to hand hold it, although I see that a lot these days, so this could work out fantastic. But the way I would use this is like this, on the tripod, on the desk in front of me. So this is going to produce fantastic sounding audio, as you can tell, and this is a great position for this microphone. So a couple other features of the ECM-S1, it has an audio meter on the front. So I dial up the volume knob to get it to go peaking into the orange. I can see if I'm distorting the signal because it'll go into the red. Of course, you got to also look at the audio meters on your camera to make sure those are set properly and not peaking as well. This records 48 kilohertz 24-bit audio. Now, a lot of wireless audio solutions these days are recording in 32-bit float, which is something people love because they can not worry about the levels like I just mentioned. However, this is a wireless microphone, not a recorder. This is going into your camera. So your camera would have to be the thing that recorded 32-bit float. In this case, my Sony mirrorless is not doing 32-bit float. Also on the microphone and the receiver, there is a little blue LED. This lets me know that the two are connected. If they're not, the one on the microphone will be blinking and you'll know you're not connected to the receiver. The receiver itself has an analog and a digital mode. Digital is how I'm using it right now because that is sending a signal via Bluetooth to the receiver from the microphone, and it's attached to the Sony camera, which it's getting its input from the hot shoe mount on the camera itself. If you have a non-Sony camera or any other audio input, you can use the 3.5 millimeter analog option and go into a microphone input on your camera or whatever else you're using. As well, as I mentioned before, both the receiver and the microphone have USB-C connections so that you can either plug in via USB-C to your computer, whether that is the receiver, it's going to receive the microphone wirelessly, or you want to take the microphone and just go directly into your computer via USB-C. So this could be your USB microphone that you use for everything that's online. And then when you switch over to your nice DSLR mirrorless camera, you can go wireless into that camera with a condenser broadcast style microphone, but into a wireless receiver for going into your camera, primarily. Sony cameras, but again, has the flexibility to go into any type of camera that has a microphone input. I'm going to plug in the receiver to the audio input jack and go analog into the camera so we can also hear what the analog version sounds like. So a 3.5 millimeter cable into the 3.5 millimeter input in the camera, and you're hearing the audio. So we can listen to the difference between the digital audio. I mean, does it really sound like anything has changed is the real question. Everything else is the same. We're just using the analog option. Of course, we are now on battery on the receiver. It's not being powered by the camera. If it's any input that is not the Sony hot shoe that fits this microphone, you can still get your audio. It's just not the best option, but it is flexible. You're not stuck if you have this system and you happen to run into another camera system that you just need to get audio into. let's go to the low cut filter, which is going to cut out some of those lower frequencies. You might use this if you are in a situation where there's some wind or there's some car rumble, something that has low frequency information, we can use that. So on the back of the microphone, there's a little switch. The LC is the low cut. You're hearing it now. This is what it sounds like. It's removing that low frequency. You're hearing less of the deep end of my voice. And this can work for some people who don't even have the deep end of their voice. And it's going to help you in a lot of situations where that low frequency is picking up stuff you don't want included in your audio. However, for me, I'm going to do that in post-production. It's not hard. You put a basic EQ, you cut out the lows where you want them. That's the key. You're baking this sound in when you use it on the microphone, meaning you can't really reverse it. You can add some low in afterwards, but you're not even choosing at which frequency it's cutting. All right, for this next part, I actually need to record on the computer. And so what you're hearing is the S1 plugged into the computer, and I'm recording on software. And then I'm lining up the audio in post-production. So if you're curious, this is what the microphone sounds like coming from the camera, which is maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from me, as opposed to having a nice microphone that is close to you so you can see it's a very stark contrast. Big difference between the quality, and this is why you want a good microphone that is close. When you're plugged in using this as a USB microphone into the computer, you can hear your own voice, what is going into the S1, and then you can also hear the audio that's coming back from the computer. And then you can use the dial on the S1 to decide how much of the computer you want to hear versus how much of your voice you want to hear, which is a stellar feature and something you're really going to want if you're going to use it as a USB microphone and have conversations with other people. All right, and so I put on headphones so I could hear, because what I'm going to do is test out the noise canceling feature. So right now the noise canceling is not engaged. So you're hearing the microphone without any processing that is on board in the S1. And I'm going to turn on the heater in the background, and then we'll listen to what it sounds like with no processing, and then I'll switch it on and we'll see if it makes any difference. And we have the heater blowing and no processing. So let's listen to that for a second. All right, now we engage noise canceling and see how much of a difference there is. All right, and that's the noise canceling on. It does sound like it's clamping down on my voice a little bit, the beginning and the end of my voice, kind of like a noise gate, but it's not a noise gate, it's processing. But you can hear that heater is just a few feet away, and it is, I can feel it actually, and so it's blowing right into me, into the rejection side of the microphone, and is doing a pretty good job of rejecting the noise. So if you have some type of noise in your space, obviously if it's winter and it's cold, or it's summer and it's hot, you have air conditioning on, and you're doing a live stream, this could be helpful. So who is this microphone for? In my opinion, I think it's for someone who does online content, on their computer. So they're computer-based, whether, again, live streaming, a podcast, something where you want high-quality audio going into your computer, or maybe it's just a conference call at work. A nice USB microphone that could be wireless, but I'd probably use it USB into the computer in that situation. And then someone who also creates videos like I do here, where I can then take that system, plug it in wirelessly to my camera, and get the same beautiful high-quality audio into my camera. So I'm the type of person that would buy a microphone like this because I do multiple different forms of content. I go from the camera to the computer-based audio. If you're just doing camera-based audio, if you're on YouTube, if you love the sound of it, that would be a reason to buy it, but it's pricey for that. You could get a lav mic, you could get a shotgun mic, lots of options to get high-quality audio. If you were just looking for a USB microphone for your computer, you can match the sound of this with a USB microphone that is probably a third of the price. So I wouldn't get it for that either. This really does seem like it is for the creator who does multiple platforms, cameras, computer, and maybe you're a musician on top of that where you need the stereo, or maybe you want to go out and capture ambient sound because you're a filmmaker, or maybe you want to do voiceover into the computer. So if you do all of those things, at least two of those things, then this microphone is probably for you. But you are going to pay more for that multi-platform flexibility. All right, that's the Sony ECM-S1. Thank you to B&H for loaning it to me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll answer them as soon as possible. I'll see you next time.